Welcome to Music and Medicine on Monday, a collaboration between the School of Music and the College of Medicine here at the University of Iowa. This podcast is designed to help musicians play and to stay healthy. More information is available on our free medical website called the Iowa Protocols, which can be accessed by searching for Music and Medicine on Monday at Iowa. We are coming to you today from the recital hall in the beautiful Voxman School of Music here in Iowa City. My name is Harry Hoffman, and I'm a physician here at the University of Iowa. Our featured guest performer today is Joe Shanks, an undergrad with a double major in electrical engineering and jazz studies with a focus on guitar, with plans to graduate in December. Our focus today is on anticipating and adapting to changes with aging as it applies to playing the guitar. With us today are Steve Grismore, professor of guitar at the University of Iowa, and Jane Brixson, an occupational therapist at the University of Iowa with a strong musical background and a commitment to helping musicians. So Joe, we've talked before about your inspirations and your playing. Maybe you can make some comments as a young guitar player about your concerns about being able to play for the rest of your life. Have you had some things pointed out to you, perhaps even today, that make you a little concerned about adapting so that you can play healthy and stay healthy?
There were a couple things mentioned today. Jane, you mentioned a couple of things in my right hand, which I have never looked at or thought about or noticed. My thumb bending inwards in a unique way that I was not aware of, so I'm feeling hyper aware of that all of a sudden.
So those are things that predictably would cause problems down the way unless they're attended to.
Mm-hmm. It could. It caused a lot of thumb pain. Yep.
So seeing someone like Jane after you've had problems is helpful, but it may actually be helpful even before you have problems to try to avoid some of those as we're going on. I'd like to define aging. The World Health Organization identified the good news, and that is that changes are neither linear nor consistent with aging, and they are only loosely associated with a person's age in years. But then the bad news. The biological process of decline in physical and mental capacity, risk of disease, and death over time is also another definition of aging. So we're all trying to avoid that and not be consistent with the number, perhaps, that we assign as our age. With that, I would like to perhaps have your next performance, and then we'll make some comments and talk about keeping you playing for the next 50, 60, 70 years. So, Steve, do you want to make some comments about Joe's playing?
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. He put it in E minor, which is, I think that's the original key maybe, but the pedal is nice. On the guitar, they open E string is the lowest string, so putting a pedal against that leaves him 5 strings to play on.
And a pedal, you meant a droning note?
A droning bottom note, yeah,
right.
The E. And then so he did some interesting things with the harmony. You reharmonized a little bit on that opening. Once again, yeah, the colors are really good. Let me make a couple of comments though.
Sure.
ba-dee-dee-doo-be-dee-da-dee-ba-da. Now, do that again and let me hear the bass notes better. More. So there's counterpoint there, and he was doing it, but it was the thumb, you were a little light on the picking. Not that he didn't play it, but I wanted to hear more of that. No. Now, the other part of the song where you were moving up, da dee da da dee da da dee da dee da da ba dee doo dee. Let's see if you can bring out the melody better on that part. Right? Because you were kind of strumming that.
Yeah, I was.
So that's a challenging thing to do.
Yeah.
Not that, so he wasn't doing anything wrong. What I'm talking about is clarity of certain things. That was a melody, bass line. Little things you try to do on the guitar. It's like a piano player. Once again, you try to bring those parts out. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
So you're mentioning his strumming wasn't defining the notes as well as they...
Yeah, on that one little section, just one little spot, trying to bring out the... Now, that was there, but I think it could be brought out even more. But see, if we were doing a lesson, I would say that to him, and he'd go home and work on it. He'd fix it and bring it back. Now, that doesn't mean that wasn't a nice performance. I'm not... That's all his own. I had nothing to do with that. It was his ideas to put that together.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, before we ask Steve about transitioning from a time when you played jazz in a smoky bar late at night that can have some problems with aging, let's have Jane just make some comments about things to do to make sure that Joe is playing when he's our age.
Yeah. Well, again, just keeping everything stretched out, supporting the joints that have maybe the hypermobility parts to them, like the thumb. Now, when you went to play a little more aggressively with your right hand on those chords as you switch that, was there more strain on the thumb area, the fingers?
I'm not
anything?
sure. I'm not looking for it.
Like, because you're doing a harder pick with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of exercises and just strengthening, again, the stretching, exercises to strengthen the hands, the core that we kind of talked about, making sure that your core is really good. A lot of times with the aging process, you start developing, do you want me to go into that a little bit?
Think, now let's take Joe down 50 years from now when his arthritis is just starting to kick in.
Yeah. So you may find, okay, you wake up in the morning and your hands are stiff or they hurt or whatever. So one of the things that we recommend is heat. There's like different ways that you can use heat to just kind of help loosen things up. You can use paraffin baths, you can use a hot pad or like a heating pad, warm water, soaking, those types of things. And that's a good time to just get those joints loosened up. Any kind of heat's going to help loosen what we call synovial fluid around the joints. And then makes things more mobile. Sometimes people will sleep at night and have maybe even the nerve compression, have the swelling, and then they wake up and they can't move their fingers, and then after their shower, they're like, oh yeah, well, I feel much more limber. Well, it's because the heat is something that helps. Now, if you end up with a lot of pain afterwards, then that's where the ice comes in.
And this is for people that have arthritis to enable them to play.
Yes.
How about anti-inflammatories? Ibuprofen, Motrin?
Yeah, I mean, and that all I think helps, and that would come more from like a physician, recommendation. But there's also gels called Voltaren creams that you can use. Yep, knees.
You know what? That stuff works.
Yeah. So
It's
I
great.
mean, sometimes people use them on their hands
I haven't
and their
tried that,
fingers,
but-
and that it's a Band-Aid, but it also helps with your pain. Pain limits us, right? So when you start finding things that are starting to hurt, there's things that you can do. And even seeking therapy, a therapist at the hospital, myself, we have all sorts of little tricks of the trade. So you've had, a recent injury to the elbow, tendonitis. It involves a tendon that attaches right to this outside bone, okay? And it comes all the way down the arm and it attaches right here to that middle finger. So the more you use that, the more you're flexing that wrist, you're doing that type of posture, picking things up, you can develop that elbow pain.
But should make it clear that was from drumming and not from guitar playing.
Right, exactly.
And so part of what Jane does and our orthopedic team is have people overcome problems like
Les Paul.
Les Paul.
Oh,
there we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
As Les Paul's story. And Steve, you probably know it better than that.
Well, no, what you said was correct. He was in an auto accident, and he broke his arm. I don't know exactly where and how many times or whatever, but they told him he was not going to, it was going to be an issue. So they set his arm like this,
In a flex.
so he could play guitar, but he couldn't put it down anymore. It was here.
So there's lots of
I mean, he might have been able to move it a little, but it was
Right.
basically he didn't
Right.
have full
Right.
range.
Sure.
This was it.
Right.
Yeah.
so uplifting stories of people overcoming disability. You mentioned a guitar player.
Django Reinhardt, who burnt 2 fingers. These 2 fingers were basically not usable, and he played like this.
2-finger lightning.
And if you see pictures of his hand, his fingers got really big because
yeah.
of the muscles he developed in those
Sure.
2 fingers.
Sure.
Interesting.
Right.
So Jane has a appliance here that might help a bit with the tennis elbow, the problem
Yeah.
that you had when you
So,
were drumming.
Yep. So a lot of times you hear tennis elbow, but if you end up with that pain on the outside, either elbow, they do have pads, and so let's just put this on just for demonstration wise, okay? And this is again more of a like a Band-Aid to just kind of help support that area. So there's always a bubble in it,
Okay.
and you always want to go about 6 inches below the elbow joint. And so when you put that on and you go to do your guitaring or you're playing drums or different things, what it's doing is it's help stabilizing that, so you're not getting what we call the tendonitis, where the tendon is the muscle, it's between the muscle and the bone. The tendon's what connects that, okay?
Right.
And that's where you get the ouchy pain. And that can happen anywhere.
Yeah.
That can happen right arm, left arm, it can happen in your shoulder. But this is specifically for that elbow pain that people
Terrific.
get.
And you adapted to the drumming problem by altering the way you were holding the drum sticks.
And taking a break, right?
And
Yes,
stop
a
playing.
long break.
Yeah.
So maybe we can ask Steve to comment, maybe across the years, about how unhealthy playing might have been in the years past in the smoky bars, and maybe how that's transitioned as you've matured.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're correct. Back in the old days, smoking was allowed everywhere. I remember playing even just here in town down at the Sanctuary. And you would walk in there and, when you went home at night, you didn't realize, someone in your house didn't smoke, which my wife didn't. I smelled like the bar when I came home. And that's what you lived with. But you were breathing that in as well. Plus I smoked, for many years. I quit 21 years ago, 22 almost now, which is good. But also in Iowa, the rules changed, about 15 years ago maybe now? There was no smoking in bars. We outlawed, that. The idea of having a smoking section and a non-smoking section was kind of a joke, I think, back in the day. I mean, it was better than nothing, but it was definitely, there's still smoke in whatever you were. So those kinds of things. I don't know. I mean, that's probably the worst thing about playing,
Well, we also talked about some of the adaptations you have made from standing the entire performance, the weight of the guitar, back problems, duration of practice.
Good point. Like this guitar here, the Les Paul weighs about 13 pounds. That doesn't sound like a lot of weight, but it's a lot heavier than this instrument. When I play jazz, I tend to sit down, which is more comfortable for me at this stage. I can stand and play that all night, but sometimes I start to get some serious pain in my lower back. I always make sure to not wear these kinds of shoes if I'm standing up all day. I wear tennis shoes. I make sure my feet are in good shoes with arches, because my feet are pretty flat, which I didn't know, which would have been great to know in 1973 when I signed up for the draft. Vietnam was still going on when I signed up, and I didn't realize I had flat feet. But but it does affect you, you can help me here, but with standing, having good shoes and fairly good posture, but that instrument's heavy. So what's interesting about that is I do have other guitars, like I have an SG that weighs probably 5 pounds less. And there's times when I can switch out instruments so that there's less weight on me. So I've done that a little bit more, although I still love that guitar, so I play it a lot.
So how about finger strength as you've gotten older?
This instrument's a challenge. The strings are heavier, but my fingers are strong, if not stronger than they've ever been. Part of that, I think, is just knowing what you're doing, kind of.
Well, it's the repetition.
The scale,
It's just like anything. If you don't go to the gym for 2 weeks,
right,
and you go back and you try to run a mile,
it's a little harder.
It's harder, right?
Yeah, I
so
agree.
you decondition as you age. You decondition as you aren't doing something. So if you do it in a gradual pattern, then you build that stamina, you build that endurance, the strength, and so the more you do it, without fatigue. I mean, that's a big thing too. Like if you are tired, rest, right? If you have pain, you need to rest it.
Well, to your point, exactly. So this guitar, I switched recently. That guitar has 9s on it, which I always played with 10s.
Can you describe the
9 thousandths of an
numbering?
inch versus 10 thousandths of an inch? But what happens is each string on a guitar gets heavier, thicker as you move towards this is, by the way, the bottom, not the top, because it's the lowest pitch. I always have to explain the guitar's backwards. Gravity has nothing to do with anything. It's music. Anyway, but to your point, yes, the gauge of strings change. So I put a little lighter string on this guitar because I bend so much when I'm playing rock and roll. And I did have a few weeks back, maybe a month ago, where I was playing 3 or 4 gigs a week in 1 week with the rock band, and I had been bending so much. I noticed that these couple of fingers were a little sore. Wasn't even the right word, but they felt a little put out. I could tell I had been putting some stress on this hand a little bit because of that. But it's not there now. I mean, I don't have any issues, but I do different kinds of music. Different things can be affected.
So part of the aging process, some think it's normal to get some ringing in your ears and hearing loss as we get older.
Oh.
That's really a problem with musicians. Do you want to comment on what you do to try to prevent that?
I don't, which is it's not a good thing. I've lost some hearing. I know I have. I asked my wife way too much. Even sitting, well, you know what I find it's interesting. It's not musical hearing, it's just what happens somehow, and there's a thing I've read, this is true, it's an interference thing. Like if I'm watching a basketball game on the TV and she asks me a question and she's not looking right at me, I hear her talk, but because of this sound, that sound is somewhat masked. And I don't always get it all. I get part of it maybe. So my ears, but when I'm playing music, I know what pitches are. I mean, it's different. It's kind of hard to explain. But I still like open ear monitors, which means the big thing now are in-ear monitors where people actually wear earpieces and things are Bluetooth to them. And you can get the mix put right in your ear at a level that's not hurting you. Plus, some of those are real expensive ones. You can actually get sound canceling earplugs. And I should probably go to that, but I'm so old school. I grew up with playing loud rock and roll guitar stuff, and I like to hear the sound coming at me. I like to feel the sound. There's things about that are hard to explain.
So Joe, we've talked to a number of young musicians. Many of them have ringing in their ears. Some with ringing ears started using ear protection. Where do you stand on that?
I have also had ringing in my ears for a long time. I did start using hearing protection, but it was a little keychain one with musicians' earplugs, and it fell off somewhere. So it's been 6 months or so, but
And you do play some loud stuff, right? Your Gabe's gigs and some of those bands are rocking.
Yeah. I'm playing organ in this rock band, and they're, organ coming through the monitors at you along with drums, guitar. It's very, very loud.
Well, the nice thing about guitar is that Segovia was playing into his 90s, and Les Paul, I think, was playing into 90, 91. So there's a future ahead, but it's nice to do things. Jane, do you have other thoughts about what things to focus on to get into the 90s when you're playing?
Wow. It's just staying healthy and taking care of your joints, your everything. Because it's the whole body, right? I mean, it's not just here playing the guitar. It's taking a walk every day.
Yeah, the falling apart is sometimes not so much the hands and the arms.
Right.
Not that your ideas are great, don't get me wrong, and they're valuable. But the truth is, at a certain point, you're just getting old and your body's falling apart. And it may be your legs, it might be your feet, it might be who knows what you have going on.
Really finding what works for you, right? The guitar that works for you, the strength of the strings that work for you, the position that works for you. Sitting works well. Sometimes you have to transition to standing. Standing gets too long, you sit. You know, like you were saying. So yeah.
Well, it's only been about a year or two since I stopped jumping off amplifiers, and I've decided I should stop doing that.
That is some behavior.
And the splits are out.
There you go.
But I used to have that really
so
well. But you're still doing all that, right?
Oh, well, I learned from the best.
That's terrific.
Oh, God.
So, Joe, thank you for a great performance. This and other episodes of Music and Medicine on Monday can be identified by searching the web for Music and Medicine on Monday and searching for Iowa.